AITA for cutting off my wife's family after finding out they saw me as their payment plan? I'm Jude, 41. Caroline and I had been married for 12 years by then, and we have an 8-year-old daughter, Ellie, who still asks me to check under her bed for monsters while also insisting she is basically grown. For most of my marriage, I thought Caroline and I had one recurring disagreement: money. I was the cautious one. Caroline was the one who believed money was useful only if it was solving a problem. Neither of those approaches is automatically wrong. The problem was that her definition of a problem kept expanding. At first, it was normal family stuff. Her mother, Gwen, needed help with a car repair after an unexpected breakdown. We covered part of it. Her brother, Porter, was short on cash 1 month and borrowed a few $100s. He paid some of it back late, apologized, and I let the rest go because it wasn't worth starting a family war over. One summer, Caroline wanted to help cover part of a relative's kids program because the parents were stretched thin. We did that too. I didn't resent any of it at the time. If anything, I probably created part of the problem myself. I liked being the dependable one. I liked knowing that if something went sideways, I could usually help fix it. When Caroline was stressed, I handled things. When Gwen called sounding worried, I tried to be useful. When Porter had another plan that was almost there but needed a little help, I sometimes gave him the benefit of the doubt. I told myself that being generous meant I didn't need to keep score. The problem with never keeping score is that eventually, other people may stop noticing there was ever a cost. About 6 months before the barbecue, Caroline started talking differently about our house. She had always called it our home. Suddenly, she was talking about our equity. One night, she was looking over some mail at the kitchen counter and said, "It's kind of crazy how much money just sits in the walls." I remember laughing because I thought she was talking about remodeling. "Unless the walls start paying the electric bill, I'm leaving the money in them," I said. She smiled, but not like I had made a joke she liked. A few weeks later, she used the phrase family safety net. I asked what she meant. She said, "Just that we have options other people don't have." I assumed she meant if one of us got sick, if the roof needed replacing, if Ellie needed something expensive, normal household emergencies. I didn't understand that when Caroline said family, she was starting to mean everybody related to her. There were little things I noticed and then dismissed. A couple of mortgage-related envelopes showed up in the kitchen mail pile. When I asked about them, Caroline said, "It's just paperwork." "What paperwork?" "House stuff. Nothing you need to worry about yet." That word, yet, should have bothered me more than it did. Then I saw an appraisal fee in our joint checking account. It wasn't enormous, but it was enough that I asked. Caroline was at the sink rinsing a coffee mug when I said, "What's this appraisal charge?" She didn't even turn around. "House stuff." "What house stuff?" "Jude, I told you. I'm looking at options." "For what?" She set the mug down harder than she needed to. "Can I research something without it turning into a cross-examination?" I backed off. That sounds stupid now, but at the time I was trying not to become the husband who monitored every purchase and demanded explanations for every transaction. We both contributed to the household. She had every right to spend money. I told myself an appraisal didn't mean anything had happened. Then Porter thanked me for believing in his project. That happened at a family birthday dinner. He had been talking for months about a renovation he wanted to finish. I knew the broad version. He had put money into a property, run into cost overruns, and was convinced that if he could finish the work, the sale would cover everything and leave him with a decent profit. I had never agreed to fund it. I had barely asked questions. Porter came up behind me while I was getting a drink and clapped me on the shoulder. "Seriously, man, I appreciate you believing in this." I looked at him. "In what?" "The project. I hope it works out." He grinned. "It will. Once everything lands, I can finally breathe." I remember thinking maybe Caroline had told him I was supportive in a general sense. That night, I asked her what he meant. She sighed. He's stressed. I told him we would see what we could do. We. Don't start. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking what you told your brother. I told him we were looking at options. There was that phrase again. Options. Then Gwen started asking strange questions. How much equity did normal couples use when they refinanced? Were rates still terrible? Was it better to take cash out or get some kind of line of credit? Did people ever use home equity to help family and then get paid back later? The first time, I answered generally. The second time, I asked why she wanted to know. She smiled and said, "A mother is allowed to be curious." I thought she was considering borrowing against her own house. In a way, she was. Just not her own house. The barbecue was at Gwen's place on a Saturday. It was one of those family gatherings that starts as lunch and somehow turns into an all-day event. Folding chairs were scattered across the backyard. There were coolers by the patio door, paper plates on every flat surface, kids running through the grass, and Porter standing over the grill like he had been personally selected by the government to protect the burgers. Ellie was playing with two younger cousins near the fence. I had been carrying plates from the patio table when I realized Caroline, Gwen, and Porter were talking just around the corner of the house. I wasn't trying to listen. Then I heard my name. Porter said something about timing. Gwen said, "He'll come around." Caroline laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an embarrassed one, a comfortable laugh. Then she said, "He thinks the house is ours, but he's really just the payment plan." Porter laughed. Gwen said, "Don't be mean." But she was laughing too. Caroline lowered her voice after that, but I was close enough to hear the next part. "When the money clears, everybody can stop panicking. Not if." When? I stood there holding two paper plates and a hamburger I hadn't taken a bite of. I wish I could say my first feeling was rage. It wasn't. My first feeling was confusion. It was like hearing the end of a conversation that had apparently been happening for months without you. I stepped back before they came around the corner. I went to the folding table, sat next to Ellie, and ate my burger. Caroline looked over at me once. "You okay?" "Fine." She studied me for half a second, then turned back to Hannah, one of her cousins, who had just arrived. I didn't confront her there. Partly because Ellie was nearby, partly because I didn't know what I was confronting yet. Calling your husband a payment plan is ugly. It's humiliating. But by itself, it's still a sentence. I wanted to know what, "when the money clears," meant before I blew up my marriage over something I had only half heard. We got home late. Ellie fell asleep in the car, so I carried her inside and put her in bed. Caroline went to shower. I came back downstairs and sat at the kitchen table. There was a mortgage statement in the mail pile. A tiny smear of dried barbecue sauce was on the corner because one of the papers from the cookout had ended up on top of it in the car. I stared at that stupid red-brown mark for a long time. Then I thought about the appraisal fee. Porter thanking me. Gwen asking about equity. The envelopes. Caroline saying, "It's just paperwork." I barely slept. Sunday morning, I did something I had resisted doing for weeks. Caroline and I had an old shared email account we had used years earlier for household bills, school registrations, insurance documents, and anything we both needed access to. We barely used it anymore. I had mentioned changing the password a few months earlier after a security alert, and Caroline had gotten oddly irritated. Why? It works. Because we've used the same password forever. You're paranoid. I had let it go. That Sunday, I logged in. The inbox was mostly junk and old statements. Then I searched mortgage. Several subject lines appeared. Loan estimate. Documents received. Action required. Missing consent. E-sign reminder. Cash out refinance. I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't open everything immediately. That may sound strange, but I was still trying to give myself an exit ramp. I didn't want to become a person who invaded every corner of his wife's communications because of one bad conversation. So I opened only enough to confirm the messages were about our address and an active refinance process. One email referenced an appraisal. Another referenced income documentation. One referenced a missing borrower consent item. I closed the laptop. Monday morning, after Ellie left for school and Caroline left the house, I called the lender listed in the email. I didn't start by accusing anybody of fraud. I said I had reason to believe there might be a refinance application involving my home and my name, and I needed to know whether anything was pending that required my authorization. The representative transferred me twice. Eventually, I spoke with someone who verified my identity and confirmed there was an application in process listing both Caroline and me. He was careful about what he said. There were documents in the file. There were still outstanding items. The loan had not closed. Final authorization was not complete. If I didn't consent to the application, he told me how to submit written notice and suggested I document the issue. I remember holding a pen over a yellow legal pad and not writing anything for several seconds. Finally, I asked, "Are there income documents under my name?" He paused and said he could confirm that documentation had been uploaded to support the application. I asked whether I had signed anything electronically. He said there were outstanding signature and consent requirements. That was enough. After the call, I checked our files. My old W-2s were in a household tax folder Caroline could access. Our bank statements were available through the joint account. None of that proved she had forged my signature, and as far as I could tell, she hadn't. What she had done was build almost the entire runway and assume she could get me onto the plane at the last minute. That afternoon, I asked her one question. "Are we refinancing the house?" Caroline froze for about 1 second. Then she kept folding a towel. "We were going to talk about it." "We were?" "Yes." "When?" She exhaled. "Can you not do this like I committed some crime?" I asked when. "When I had the numbers." "You already had the house appraised." "I was gathering information." "There's a loan application." She looked at me then. "You called them?" "Yes." Her face changed. Not guilt exactly. Alarm. "Why would you do that before talking to me?" That almost made me laugh. "Why would I call the lender before talking to you about the loan application you started before talking to me? You're twisting this." "I'm asking what's happening." She sat down across from me. For the next 10 minutes, she gave me pieces. Porter needed money to keep his renovation project alive. Gwen wanted to sell her old place and move into something smaller, but she needed cash flexibility to make the transition. The refinance would pull equity from our house. Porter would pay back his part after the project sold. Gwen would pay back hers after her old house sold. "It's temporary," Caroline said. "How much?" She gave me a number that was large enough that I had to ask her to repeat it. I won't pretend I stayed perfectly calm. My voice got sharper. "You were going to take that much equity out of our house for two people who don't live here. They're not strangers." "I didn't say they were strangers. You always do this. You hear my family, and your answer is no before I can even explain it. I've helped your family for 12 years. Small things." Apparently, I should have realized the small things were a trial period. She stood up. "Porter is desperate. That doesn't make our house his collateral. And my mom is trying to secure her retirement. Our house is not her retirement plan." Caroline's eyes filled, but she was angry, not broken. "You have no idea what it's like to feel responsible for everybody." That stopped me because, in a strange way, I did understand that. I had been acting responsible for everybody for years. The difference was I had thought I was volunteering. "I'm not signing it," I said. She stared at me. "You haven't even heard the whole plan. I heard enough to know you started it without me. We were going to talk." After everyone else was already counting on the money. She didn't answer. That evening, something happened that removed the last doubt I had about whether this was simply Caroline getting carried away. Gwen left a voicemail. It landed on my phone because Caroline had forwarded me a thread of house-related messages earlier that day, while trying to prove the refinance was just preliminary. The forwarded chain included an audio attachment Gwen had left for her. I almost deleted it. Then I heard my name in the preview transcription. Gwen's voice was soft, almost soothing. "Sweetheart, don't let Jude shut everything down before he sees how close you are. Get everything lined up first. Once Porter has his date and I have mine, it will be harder for him to say no without feeling like he's hurting everyone. You know how he is. He'll complain. But he doesn't like disappointing people." There was a pause. Then she added, "A marriage should make both families stronger." I listened twice. The second time hurt worse. Because Gwen was right about one thing. I didn't like disappointing people. They had noticed. And they had built a strategy around it. I called my cousin Victor that night. Victor is 45 and one of the few people in my family who can tell me I'm being an idiot without making me defensive. I told him what I knew. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Don't punish. Document. I'm not trying to punish anybody." "Good. Keep it that way. Protect your credit. Protect the house. Protect Ellie's day-to-day life. Don't empty accounts. Don't threaten people. Don't send angry texts you'll hate later. Just stop anything you didn't authorize. That was the first useful advice I had heard in 2 days. So that's what I did. I submitted written notice to the lender that I did not authorize or consent to the refinance and would not execute any loan documents. I froze my credit. I changed passwords on my personal financial accounts. I opened an individual checking account and redirected my direct deposit there. I didn't drain the joint account. I left enough to cover the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and routine household expenses while we figured out what came next. I continued paying my share of everything for Ellie: school costs, activities, clothes, whatever she needed. I also stopped the quiet family subsidies. No more covering Gwen's phone bill when she forgot a month. No more spotting Porter a few $100s. No more random transfers Caroline described as temporary. I made an appointment with a family attorney because I needed to understand the house, joint property, and what I could legally protect without doing something reckless. The attorney didn't wave a magic wand. He told me to keep records, not interfere with necessary household expenses, and not treat joint property like it was solely mine. He also told me that if trust had broken down this badly, I needed to think about more than the refinance. By Wednesday, Caroline knew I had frozen my credit. She stood in the kitchen holding her phone. Did you seriously freeze your credit? Yes. Do you hear how insane that sounds? After finding an application using my income documents? It sounds pretty normal to me. I didn't forge your signature. I know. That surprised her. I continued. You didn't need to forge it. You were trying to get everything ready so that my signature became the only thing standing between your family and a deadline. That's not fair. Gwen literally said it. Caroline's face went still. What? I heard the voicemail. She looked away. That was the first moment I knew she understood this was bigger than whether I would sign a loan. By Friday morning, the refinance was dead. Porter called me before Caroline did. I was in the driveway when my phone rang. The second I answered, he started yelling. You cost me the project. I almost hung up. Instead, I said, what happened? You know what happened. The funding is gone. I never agreed to fund you. You knew this was happening. No, I found out at your barbecue. He went quiet for half a beat. Then he said, Caroline said you were on board. She was wrong. I put down 9,500 based on that money. 9,500 what? 9,500. Contractor deposit. Non-refundable. I closed my eyes. Part of me felt bad. I mean that sincerely. $9,500 is real money. I knew Porter was reckless, but I didn't know he had committed that much based on a refinance that still lacked my signature. Then he said, you could have warned me before you pulled it. That changed something in me. Warned you about what, Porter? That I wasn't going to sign away equity in my house for a deal nobody asked me about. You're making it sound dirty. I'm describing it. I was going to pay it back when the place sold. Then you should have borrowed money from someone who agreed to lend it. You never wanted me to win. I almost responded, but Victor's sentence came back to me. Do not punish. Document. So I said, I'm sorry you lost the deposit. I didn't make you spend money you didn't have. Then I ended the call. Caroline was furious that evening. Not because she had learned anything new. Because Porter had called her screaming, Gwen had called crying, and suddenly the consequences were no longer theoretical. You humiliated me, she said. We were in our bedroom with the door shut because Ellie was downstairs watching a movie. I didn't tell anybody anything. Everyone knows you shut it down. I shut down a loan in my name. They were counting on us. You keep saying us. Because we're married. Then why was I the last person included? She rubbed her forehead. You knew they needed help. I knew Porter had a renovation project. I knew your mom wanted to move. I didn't know you had promised them money from our house. I didn't promise. Porter lost $9,500 because he believed the money was coming. She looked at me. That was his decision. It was the first thing she had said all week that sounded exactly like something I would have said. I nodded. Correct. And starting a refinance without me was yours. She flinched. Stop trying to win every sentence. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to figure out whether you understand what you did. She sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, she looked exhausted. Then she said, You always make me choose. Between what? You and my family. I have never asked you to choose between me and your family. You make everything a boundary. Because apparently we needed some. The next day, Gwen called and invited us to dinner to clear the air. I didn't want to go. Caroline said refusing would make everything worse. I told her I would go once. I also told her I would leave if the entire purpose was to force me to apologize for not signing the refinance. She said, "Nobody is forcing you to apologize." That should have been funny. The dinner was at Gwen's house. Porter was there. Hannah was there too, along with another relative who mostly stayed out of it. Ellie was not. I made sure of that. For the first 15 minutes, everybody pretended we were having a normal meal. Then Gwen set down her fork. "Jude, I think we need to talk about what happened." I said, "Okay." She folded her hands. "This family has always tried to support one another." Porter made a small noise that could have been agreement or impatience. Gwen continued, "What you did was very hurtful. Not because you said no, but because of how you did it." I asked, "How did I do it?" "You went behind Caroline's back. You contacted the lender. You froze things. You separated money. You made her look dishonest." That last sentence almost impressed me. I made her look dishonest. Caroline said, "Mom." But Gwen kept going. "A marriage should not have one person controlling the purse strings." Hannah nodded. That got my attention because I had always liked Hannah. She was usually reasonable. She said, "I do think moving your paycheck without talking first is a lot." "That part is fair to question," I said. Caroline looked surprised that I agreed. I continued. "I moved my paycheck after I found out my financial documents had been used in a refinance application I didn't authorize. I left money for every household bill. I am still paying the mortgage. I am still paying Ellie's expenses. I didn't empty a joint account." Porter leaned forward. "You're hiding behind technicalities." "No, I'm being specific. You cost me $9,000. You spent $9,000 before you had funding. You knew the plan." "I did not." Caroline spoke quietly. "You knew we were talking about helping." "I knew you were talking about helping. That's not the same as knowing you had started a cash-out refinance." Gwen shook her head. "You made this ugly, Jude." I had brought a folder. Not because I wanted a dramatic reveal. Because I had learned what happened when I relied on everyone remembering conversations the same way. I put it on the table. "There's already an ugly part. It's the part where you all told people I agreed to something I didn't agree to." Caroline's face went pale. I pulled out a printout of the joint account, lines showing the appraisal fee. "This came out of our account." When I asked what it was, Caroline told me house stuff. Then a printout showing the subject lines from the shared email account. "Loan estimate. Documents received. Missing consent. E-sign reminder." I didn't pass around private tax documents. I didn't need to. I placed the lender's confirmation that I had withdrawn authorization next to them. "These are not ideas. This was an active application." Porter said, "It was preliminary. Preliminary enough for you to spend $9,500. He opened his mouth and stopped. I pulled up his text on my phone. It had been sent to Caroline, then forwarded in the same message chain she had sent me. "When the cash out lands, I can lock the crew and stop bleeding money." I read it once and put the phone down. Then I played Gwen's voicemail. Her own voice filled the dining room. "Get everything lined up first. It will be harder for him to say no without feeling like he's hurting everyone." I stopped it there. Gwen looked at Caroline. "You sent him that?" Caroline said, "It was in the thread." Gwen looked back at me. "You were never meant to hear that out of context." I said, "What context makes it better?" She didn't answer. Hannah had stopped nodding. She looked at Caroline. "Wait." Caroline rubbed her temple. Hannah said, "You told us Jude already said yes." Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Caroline said, "I said he agreed in principle." Hannah shook her head. "No. At Aunt Mara's, you said you guys had already decided to pull equity, and it was basically paperwork." Caroline's eyes flashed. "That's what I meant." "That's not what you said." Porter leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he looked less angry at me than confused at his sister. "You told me the same thing," he said. Caroline turned to him. "You knew I still had to get the final signature. I thought that was routine." "It was." I said, "My signature is not routine." Caroline snapped. "Nobody said it was." I looked at her. "You call me the payment plan." that landed differently than all the documents. She looked down. Gwen said, "She was joking." I heard the joke. I also heard, "When the money clears." Caroline's eyes filled. I didn't enjoy that. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. I said, "You call me the payment plan. I'm done being the loan paperwork too." Gwen started to speak, but I held up a hand. "I'm not asking any of you to like me right now. I'm telling you what will happen. I will not sign the refinance. I will not use our house to fund Porter's project. I will not use it to bridge Gwen into another property. I am not the family bank." Porter pushed his chair back. "You don't get to act like you are better than everyone because you are more conservative with money. I don't think I'm better than you. You sure sound like it. I think if you need my money, you need my permission." That shut down the argument more effectively than anything else I had said. Then Caroline said the sentence that ended our marriage as I knew it. Not the legal marriage. Not that night. But the version of it I had believed in. She said, "I was trying to make it harder for you to say no." Her voice was quiet. No performance. No excuses. Just the truth. I looked at her. She wiped under one eye. "I knew if I came to you at the beginning and said Porter needs this much and Mom needs this much, you would reject it before I could get you to see the whole picture. So you built the picture around me. I thought once everything was lined up, you would understand." Understand what? That people were depending on us. That is the pressure you were trying to create. She didn't answer. I said, "You were not trying to convince me. You were trying to make refusal expensive." Gwen said, "You are putting ugly words on family obligation." I turned to her. "You said it yourself on the voicemail." She looked away. Hannah spoke then. "I thought Jude was just refusing to help because he wanted control." Caroline said, "Please, Hannah." Hannah shook her head. "No, you told us he had already agreed. That's why I thought he was backing out." That was the moment Caroline lost control of the story. Not because I had perfect evidence. Not because everyone suddenly decided I was right. Porter was still furious. Gwen still thought family need justified most of what had happened. But the version where I had cruelly changed my mind at the last second no longer worked. I stood up. "I'm leaving." Caroline looked at me. "Can we go home and talk?" "Yes, but we're not solving this tonight." The drive home was silent. When we got there, I checked on Ellie. She was asleep at a friend's house that night, thankfully, so we didn't have to pretend. Caroline and I sat in the living room. She said, "I'm sorry." I believed she was sorry. That was part of what made it harder. She wasn't a cartoon villain. She wasn't sitting there pleased with herself. She looked wrecked. But then she said, "I still think what you did was extreme." There it was. I asked, "Which part?" "Freezing your credit, moving your paycheck, letting Porter lose his deposit without warning him." I didn't know about the deposit. You knew there were deadlines. I knew people had created deadlines around money I hadn't agreed to give them. She pressed both hands to her face. "I can't do this with you when every answer turns into a legal argument." It's not a legal argument. It feels like one. It feels like one because I need exact facts now. I used to trust the general version. She started crying then. Quietly. I sat there and hated the whole situation. After a while she said, "My mom has been scared about money for years." I know. Porter really believed this project could fix things. I know. They both come to me. Always me. I know. I felt like if I could solve both problems at once, maybe everyone would stop needing something. That was the first time I saw her motivation without the defensiveness. She had been manipulated by Gwen. Porter had pressured her. But she had also made choices. I said, "You could have told me you were drowning. You would have said no." "Maybe." She looked at me like that proved her point. I continued. "And then we would have had the fight we were supposed to have. Before the appraisal. Before the application. Before Porter spent money. Before your mom started shopping based on our equity." She stared at the floor. I didn't know how to disappoint them. I almost laughed because that was exactly what they had counted on with me too. The difference was that Caroline had dealt with her fear of disappointing them by volunteering me to absorb it. Over the next 2 weeks, the consequences kept arriving. Porter's project stalled. He tried to recover his contractor deposit and got only a small portion back. He blamed me at first, then blamed Caroline, then blamed the contractor, then went back to blaming me. Gwen missed the window on the smaller house she wanted. She told relatives I had destroyed her retirement plan. That phrase spread far enough that even some people in her family started asking why her retirement plan depended on equity from a house she did not own. Hannah called Caroline and apparently asked that exact question. Caroline got angry with her. Then Gwen got angry with Caroline for not handling me better. Porter told Caroline she had guaranteed him the money. She said she had not guaranteed it. He reminded her of messages where she had said it was basically done. Within days, the same people Caroline had tried hardest not to disappoint were treating her like she had personally stolen money from them. I didn't enjoy watching that either. It confirmed something ugly. They had not only been using me, they had been using her role as the person responsible for getting access to me. At home, Caroline moved into the guest room. We didn't announce a separation to Ellie right away because we hadn't made a final decision. But 8-year-olds notice everything. 3 nights in, Ellie stood in my doorway in pajamas and asked, "Why is Mom sleeping in the other room?" I sat on the edge of the bed. "Mom and I are having some grown-up disagreements." "Are you mad at her?" "We are both upset." "Did she do something bad?" That was the hardest question anyone asked me during the entire mess. I could have said yes. I could have made myself the safe parent and Caroline the dangerous one in one sentence. Instead, I said, "She made a choice I don't agree with, and I made some choices she doesn't agree with. We are working out what happens next." Ellie looked suspicious. "Are we moving?" "I don't know yet, but you are safe, and both of us love you. That part is not changing." She nodded. Then she asked me to check under the bed. There were no monsters. I wish the adult problems had been that simple. Caroline and I started counseling, but not because we were pretending everything could go back to normal. We also started discussing separation logistics. I kept my individual paycheck account. We kept a shared household account for agreed expenses. Every major transfer required both of us to know what it was. It felt clinical. Caroline hated it. I hated needing it. But after what happened, returning immediately to the old system would have been pretending. I also followed up with the attorney about the house. Again, nothing dramatic happened overnight. There was no secret trick where I suddenly owned everything and Caroline walked away with nothing. We had built a life together for 12 years. The house, the equity, our savings, our responsibilities, all of it had to be handled through real processes. That mattered to me. I didn't want revenge disguised as protection. A month after the barbecue, Caroline and I had the conversation that made the separation real. We were at the kitchen table. The same place I had sat with the barbecue-stained mortgage statement. She said, "I know I broke your trust." I waited. She continued, "I should never have started the application without you. I should not have sent your documents. I should not have told everyone you agreed." I nodded. Then she said, "But I still think you could have come to me before killing it." I looked at her for a long time. That's the part one can't get past. "What? You still think the worst thing was that I reacted without giving you one more chance to control the timing?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you mean." She shook her head. "I mean you're my husband. You should have talked to me." "I did talk to you, after I confirmed the loan existed. And you told me we were going to talk later." She looked down. I said, "If I had talked to you first, what would you have done?" She didn't answer. "Would you have withdrawn the application yourself?" "I don't know." "Would you have told Porter not to rely on the money?" "I don't know." "Would you have told when the house was off limits?" She whispered, "I don't know. That's why I called the lender first." She started crying again. Not loudly. Just exhausted tears. "I didn't mean to destroy us." "I know." That was true. Intent was not the issue anymore. She had not wanted to destroy our marriage. She had wanted to arrange the circumstances so that I would feel morally trapped into saying yes. Those two things could both be true. We agreed to a controlled separation. Caroline stayed with Gwen for a few weeks at first, then moved into a short-term place while we worked through the practical side. We built a co-parenting schedule around Ellie's routines. School nights stayed predictable. We didn't make her carry messages. We didn't discuss money fights in front of her. When Gwen tried to tell Ellie that Grandma had to change plans because your dad wouldn't help, Caroline shut it down immediately. That mattered to me. Whatever else had happened, Caroline did not let Ellie become another pressure point. Over time, that gave me some hope that we could at least become decent co-parents, even if we could not become the same married couple again. Porter eventually found another way to keep part of his project moving, but on a smaller scale. He never apologized to me. I did not ask him to. Gwen stayed in her old house. For a while, she treated that like a tragedy caused by me. Then the family stopped reacting when she repeated it. Hannah and I were never especially close before, but she sent me one message a few weeks after the dinner. "I'm sorry, I assumed you were controlling Caroline. I didn't know what she had told you versus what she told us." I replied, "I appreciate that." That was all. Caroline's relationship with her family changed too. Not because she suddenly cut them off. She didn't. But the refinance disaster forced her to see that their idea of support had no natural stopping point. Gwen still called with emergencies. Porter still had plans. The difference was that Caroline no longer had my unspoken stability sitting behind every promise. She had to say, "I can't commit Jude's money." Then later, after we separated, "I can't commit money that is not mine." She told me once that those sentences made her feel disloyal. I told her I understood. I did not tell her she was wrong to feel that way. Some habits are emotional before they are financial. The house itself became one of the last things we settled. We considered selling. We considered one of us buying out the other. Eventually, we agreed to handle it through a formal refinance arrangement based only on the actual ownership decision we both signed off on, with attorneys reviewing the documents. The irony was not lost on either of us. The second refinance process had fewer emails, fewer secrets, and far more signatures. Nothing moved until both of us understood it. The first time I received a mortgage statement after the original refinance was canceled, I set it on the kitchen table. For a second, I thought about the old one. The one with the barbecue sauce on the corner. I still had it in a drawer. I had kept it through the calls, the dinner, the separation talks, all of it. Not because I needed it as evidence. Because it had become a symbol in my head of the exact moment I understood something I had been avoiding for years. I had thought peace meant being the person who could absorb more. One more favor. One more late repayment. One more uncomfortable question I decided not to ask because I didn't want to seem controlling. One more expense I could technically afford. I had been proud of being easy to rely on. Somewhere along the way, people started confusing reliable with available. I pulled the old statement from the drawer. The sauce mark was still there. I looked at it once, then tore the paper in half and put it in the shredder. Not because I wanted to forget. I didn't need the reminder anymore. I still paid the mortgage. I still paid for Ellie's school things. I still helped people sometimes when I chose to. What changed was that family stopped being a password that unlocked everything I had built. Caroline and I never returned to the marriage we had before the barbecue. There was too much damage, and the apology never became the kind of full accountability I needed to trust her with joint financial decisions the way I once had. But we became more honest after we stopped pretending honesty alone would fix it. We could sit at Ellie's school events together. We could coordinate weekends. We could disagree without recruiting relatives. That wasn't the ending I would have chosen 12 years earlier. But it was real. And when the house paperwork was finally settled, every name, every number, and every obligation on those pages was there because the people responsible for them had actually agreed. No one was a payment plan. No one was a retirement strategy. No one was a signature waiting to be cornered. For the first time in a long time, that was enough. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.